So New York City FC won 2-0.
2-0, okay.
And I mean, Atlas isn't doing well, right? They are second to last in the league with a 1% probability of making the repechaje.
¿Qué le llamaste? El bicampeonitis.
El bicampeonitis. You know, America Chivas fans, they won't know nothing about that. So my question to you is, how close is MLS to Liga MX?
As far as quality or
overall. So, you know, even this is a whole U.S. versus Mexico debate, right? That we always have.
Yeah.
We were brought up with Mexico. We were brought up with El Tri. We were brought up with La Selección. We were both, you and I specifically, we were both born here, right? So we have ties to the U.S. men's national team,
right?
Because this is where we were born, right? This is where. But over the past year and a half, right? Nations League final, U.S. Copa Oro final, U.S. El Campeón de Campeones, U.S.
Yeah.
CONCACAF Champions League for club, it was Seattle Sounders.
Seattle. They finally, that was their first.
That was the first, first one. The, you know, take it for what you want. The All-Stars, Mexico All-Stars versus the MLS All-Stars. Both of them the last 2 years. MLS. Yep. Both qualifiers, 2-0 and 0-0 in El Azteca.
Yeah.
How close is Mexico to being trumped from El Grande de la CONCACAF?
I mean, based on the last couple years, close. I mean, the U.S. and the MLS already has the economy, the infrastructure. I think the majority of the teams have their own soccer stadium.
Besides New York City FC, to tell
New
you
York
the truth,
City
they still play at
and
Yankee
New England,
Stadium.
I think.
Yeah.
So there's only like a couple or like less than 5, let's say that.
Yeah.
The majority of them have their own soccer stadium. There's diversity here. It's been growing. I'm gonna date myself by saying the following, but
you're old.
Yeah. I remember growing up with soccer, getting into the '94 World Cup. At the time, you know, I got into Club America because of my uncle, the Mexican national team. I remember talking to people of other diversities, even friends, whatever it might be, mentioning in those times, oh, I love soccer. They'd be like, soccer? Who watches soccer? You know, those type of comments, right? Maybe you might have had similar experiences. But now over the years, you know, I'm talking to coworkers of various different diversities about UEFA Champions League or going to an MLS game, this and that. So it's grown. It's there. And based on what the foundations that I just laid out earlier, I think within the next 10 years, for sure, we could be talking about the MLS being the best league in CONCACAF. Keep in mind, the World Cup's coming up here in 2026. The U.S. national team is growing. It could be sooner.
Yeah.
It could be sooner. We have this discussion all the time about the Mexican national team and being estancada. It's not going to change. And, you know, for the most part, I agree with you. At some point, it's going to affect certain pockets, right? What will change it? Who knows? I've mentioned Mexico maybe finally missing out on a World Cup.
We've all brought up, yeah.
But then 2026 World Cup, I think they're going to move up to like 48 teams?
That's the first World Cup with 48 teams. So it's going to be tailor-made for the ones that bring in the most revenue to continue participating in the World Cup.
Yeah.
And Mexico's just going to keep participating in the World Cup.
Right.
Like it's not going to change, right? Like you were mentioning the infrastructure in the MLS, they've dumped all this money into the league, as well as their youth academies. There's certain like FC Dallas, Philadelphia Union, RB, the Red Bull, New York Red Bulls.
Right.
They ship out players as young as they're in their teens.
Yeah.
And to go develop, you know, they showed us the least amount of the minimal amount of promise, and they go.
Right. And
they're not afraid.
And there's typically no hesitancy from either the club side or the player side.
Correct.
So something
that's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you can always argue the deficiencies of MLS as well, right? No relegation.
No relegation.
But guess what? There's no relegation in Mexico anymore either.
Exactly.
Right? You just buy in. You can start a franchise. Mexico could have the same resources as MLS owners do. They have the money.
Right.
They have the stadium. They have the land. They have the fan base and the popularity of the sport throughout the entire country.
Of course, yeah.
Much more than the U.S. does.
Yeah. Maybe not the economy, though. The amount someone can spend at a game maybe like in Mexico City, people can afford a game, right?
But you still have the television rights, and you still have that kind of the ratings still account for something.
Yeah.
Because even in the U.S., MLS is not the most popular soccer league to watch. Right? You can argue it's Liga MX and the Premier League.
Yeah,
they're the most popular, and then maybe
Champions League.
Then maybe Champions League.
Yeah,
and then maybe MLS is an afterthought.
Right.
So,
but it is growing.
As soon as those numbers flip, if they flip, then the U.S. is going to be the CONCACAF, and it's not even going to be close.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's closer than people think.
Oh yeah, it's closer than hardcore Mexican soccer fans want to give credit to it too.
Exactly.
They will refuse to believe it.
Yep. I've had conversations with a few people like that as well.
Yeah.
You even see the Canadian national team benefiting from the MLS.
Canada wasn't supposed to be good until 2026.
Right.
And they finished first in the CONCACAF.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Now, you can look at the table, because Mexico finished second only by goal differential, right?
Yeah.
And then the U.S. finished only above Canada, only on the goal differential as well. No, Canada. Costa Rica. Sorry. So, CONCACAF is probably one of the lesser regions of football in the world, right? Probably the most bottom ranked, besides maybe Mexico. You got Europe, you got South America, right? There's only 6 regions.
Right.
You got Europe,
Africa.
And then you got Africa and Asia and Mexico. I feel like are in a clump.
Are you referring to the quality of their national teams or of their leagues?
No, just as a region, just as a federation like CONCACAF, AFCON,
and the ability to produce talent.
The ability to produce talent, the ability of how they perform at the national team level. Maybe because you have Asian countries that have gone to the Final Four in a World Cup.
I would put CONCACAF. I think is above obviously Oceania. There's obvious.
Yes.
And then because even putting them above Africa might be tough because Africa does tend to produce great quality players. Their leagues might not be strong.
Yeah.
Maybe the strongest being South Africa, I can't really think of maybe the Egyptian league. Who knows? But
you've had African countries get to a quarterfinal,
right,
in more recent memory than Mexico has.
Yeah, no question. That's a tough question, but
anyway, what I was trying to get at with that question and that subject is that whether it's bottom of the barrel amongst all the other federations, it's hard to go play in CONCACAF. It's hard to play in those fields in El Salvador, in Honduras, in Jamaica, in Panama. So Mexico has experience still on their squad, right?
Yeah.
So they know how to play those games.
Right.
That's why they finish second in qualifying only by goal differential. U.S. players have maybe one player above 40 caps, 30 caps, right?
Right.
And the rest of them this was their first cycle.
Yeah.
Because they missed out on the last World Cup.
Missed out, they're rebuilding.
But now they have that experience of a World Cup qualifying. Now, granted, the next World Cup, they're not going to have to go through qualifying.
Right.
But this builds more for future World Cups, absolutely.
And they have a good base, the U.S. national team, for 2026.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
So
to answer your initial question,
it's close.
It's close. Less than 10 years for sure.
Yeah, you hear all the pundits. It says this is the closest the talent pool and just like how close they are to each other as it's ever been, as for more from recent memory as well.
Now, one thing I would like to see is the MLS start playing the same schedule that your European from fall to spring or early summer.
Don't hold your breath for that one.
Yeah, it requires more. I see it possible, but I think things holding it up could be obviously the NFL, the eyes of the NBA, teams not having a soccer specific stadium.
That
might be
seasons.
One of the big ones. Yeah, that's probably one of the big ones. But so New England, New York City, get on it. I mean, you have the economy, the city, the following. So to those owners, build your own stadium. Doesn't matter if it's a small one. People will come and continue letting this league grow.
Yes, agreed.